Hey there, I want to kick off this presentation with a couple of questions for you. The first one is, how does your typical work week feel by the time you get to Friday? Is it A, like I crushed it and made money, B, productive but exhausting, or C, like I was busy all week and I'm still behind? The second question is, which area do you spend the most time in your business right now? Is it A, client work, billables, deliverables, B, admin and tech and back-end stuff, C, marketing, content outreach, or D, just trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing? There's so much going on, where do I even start? Again, make a mental note of what your answer is for both of these questions. And next, I want you to imagine if your calendar reflected the kind of business that you're building, not just the tasks that are demanding your attention. What would that feel like? How does your heart respond when you imagine this for yourself as you're moving along in your business? So we're going to cover this concept of time zones and timelines in your business today because I want to give you a framework for how to manage your hours, how to manage your most precious resource, which is your time, so that you can increase your revenue, you can protect your creative energy, and grow sustainably in your business. So I'm going to cover the 3 time zones and how they impact your income. Then I'm going to cover the 3 hidden timelines. These are timelines that are present but often not discussed, and they definitely determine when your work turns into results. I'm also going to share with you how to recalibrate your time and the way you think about time through this lens of value, energy, and also understanding what stage of business that you're actually in, so that you can leave with some fresh insights and action steps and be in motion at the end of this. So again, my name's Lisa Mullis, and as a messaging specialist and business growth advisor, I help service providers, primarily consultants, coaches, and creative professionals, to turn their words into revenue. I'm coming to you from more than 25 years in marketing, both in design and copywriting and everything in between, and a lot of teaching. And I've spent more than 20 years as a full-time business owner. I'm in my second business now. So I'm bringing in a lot of experience and expertise into this conversation. Let's talk about where your time is going, because every minute of every day that you're spending in your business, it's going somewhere. And it's going in one of these 3 time zones. And let me just clarify, if you're a service-based business, meaning most of your income is coming through selling services, whether that is in a one-to-one or maybe even a one-to-many capacity, but you're selling services as opposed to, let's say, digital products or courses. So in a service business, your time is going to fall into one of these 3 time zones. The first one is the income time zone. This is where you are delivering on client work, billable time. The second time zone is the expense time zone. This is your time that you spend on admin and tech and things like that. And then the third area is the investment time zone. Okay, this is where you are doing high-level CEO type work. So just to further break this down, the income time zone, because it's client delivery work, it's going to feel very comfortable. You know this. You know how to do this work. It feels safe. It feels productive. And it's how you're getting paid now. For the expense time zone, this is where we often hide, actually, when business feels hard. A lot of tinkering and tweaking and things like that. Maybe you're just like working on your website when you know you don't really need to be, or just caught up in all the tech and all of the admin kinds of things. And this is where you often will feel this illusion of stability, or it's a place where you procrastinate, or you go to feel some level of control. This work is absolutely necessary, but is not directly tied to your revenue. Now, the investment time zone is your revenue generating time. This is where you're doing high-level strategy. You're doing any sort of visibility work, business development, aka marketing, outreach, follow-up. This is your CEO level type of work. Here's the thing, nobody's asking for it, and there's no deadline or immediate payoff for it, but this is absolutely the time that builds the future you say you want in your business. And I'm going to repeat that. This is the time that builds the future you say you want in your business. So let me ask you this. What does it look like for you, the way that you spend your time across these 3 time zones? Is it like this, where you have a lot of time that you're spending in the income time zone, again, client delivery, and maybe also about an equal level of time spent in the expense time zone, which is your admin and back office type of things, and a little slice of that pie in the investment time zone. Again, remember that's the revenue generating. Or does it look like this? Maybe you are getting just started in your business, so you don't have a ton of billable time, client delivery time. That's your income time zone. So that one's a smaller piece of the pie, but you're getting a lot of systems set up and back office kind of admin things. That's your expense time zone. And again, a little tiny slice of that investment time zone. Or have you been in your business for a while and you've got a ton of clients and delivery work to do, so you're spending a lot of your time in the income time zone, and then a good chunk in the expense time zone, and another little tiny slice in the investment time zone. Are you seeing a pattern here amongst all these different scenarios, right? The investment time zone is, in these scenarios, often a little tiny slice, and that is very common for service providers. But I'm going to encourage you to adjust your time zone ratio. Remember, I said the investment time zone is where you are building the future that you want in your business. So you absolutely need to deliver on the client projects that you have secured. So you do need to spend time in the income time zone for sure. That's where you're getting paid, at least and up to 50%. Then I want you to look at the investment time zone as your second most important area to spend time then. So you may need to increase that pie to 30%. And the expense time zone then decreases to no more than about 20%. And certainly you can have help, right? That's a great area of the business to get some help in the expense time zone. If you're new in your business, you may need to spend more time in the investment time zone, even than what I've recommended, simply because you need to be out there bringing in more clients and projects. If you're already booked, but you're stalled in growth, you may be overspending your time in the income or the expense time zone. So I want you to consider how shifting even as little as 3 to 5 hours a week into the investment time zone can build real traction. My point being is it doesn't take a big shift necessarily, but it requires you to rethink about where all of your time is going, because it's going into one of these three areas. So what does that ratio look like for you? Now I've got this chart here too that gives you a full kind of at a glance view of these three time zones in your business and what each of them are, and my recommended ratio for this. And I'm basing this on kind of a standard full-time equivalent in your business of roughly 40 hours a week. Now let's talk about when the results show up. And this is getting into these hidden timelines. And I mentioned before that they exist in your business, in everyone's business, but we don't talk about them very often. They're not widely acknowledged, even though they are very present. And I'm coming to you with this after many, many, many years of being in business and working with many dozens of clients and seeing this pattern of these three time zones repeat over and over again. So just to recap where we're at with the time zones, that's about what you're doing, and the timelines are when the results of what you're doing are going to show up. Most business owners are going to be on multiple timelines at once, but if you don't know what they are, you may not realize it. And if you don't realize what timeline you're on, that can lead to wasted effort, resources, energy, and just generally feeling like you're failing, when actually what's happening is you may be mid-process on that timeline. The very first timeline is the marketing timeline. This is the time it takes for visibility and relationship building efforts to generate client work. If you're new in your business or you're new to marketing, let's say you have been subsisting on word of mouth and referrals, but no longer. So you're new to marketing, therefore you don't have any marketing assets or much practice marketing. It's going to take about 6 months to get real traction with your marketing efforts. If you're practiced with marketing, let's say you do have assets and you have done marketing before, it's about 3 to 4 months for real meaningful traction. Again, this is not a course all the time across the board for every single person forever and ever, but this is a very common pattern that I have seen over many years. So 6 months for someone new, 3 to 4 months for someone practiced. All right. So keep that in mind. And let's talk about the build timeline. This is the time that it takes to create things like offers and assets like your website or messaging elements and systems, of course, for having a sustainable business. Now, If you're new in your business, again, it's going to take longer because you may be building entirely from scratch. If you've been in your business for a while, you may still need to be building some of these things, but you may have also elements already. So factor in at least 6 months to build some of these things: messaging, assets, systems. And all of these things are also kind of on their own cycle within this overall timeline. You will create the thing, you will put it out there, which is what I mean by shipping. You will get some feedback on it, you will iterate, and you will put it out there again. So you're in this iterative process within this timeline with the things that you're building. The third hidden timeline is the business focused timeline. And this is the time that it takes to narrow your scope of all of your work that you're doing and really find true alignment between the vision that you have and the action that you're taking. And this is just a necessary rite of passage almost for being in business and being a business owner. Your early years are going to look a little chaotic and kind of messy as compared to your later years. So if you're in your early years in your business and you're kind of all over the place and trying to figure out, where is it that you really want to focus and get specific and niche down and all of that, that's totally normal. Just recognize that it may be a lot more happening in terms of that than it will later on. So these hidden timelines, the marketing timeline, is understanding that this exists is also a reason why when you jump from strategy to strategy and you don't allow for that timeline to unfold, that you are actually delaying your momentum because what's happening is you are in effect restarting the timeline. So you may be out, decide you want to be really active in social media. So you do that, let's say for, a month or two or whatever, but you're not getting any traction. So now you decide, okay, I think I'm going to do a webinar instead. And so then you put all your focus over there. But again, if you don't allow those timelines to play out, you are resetting that timeline each time you're jumping to the next thing. And it can also mean that if you've been working a strategy for a while, but still haven't seen results, don't quit. Don't quit yet. If maybe you're in month 4 of your 6-month timeline, because you're new to marketing. Now for that build timeline, this is exactly why it always takes longer than you think. And it absolutely takes longer than what the online business world, the prevailing messages would lead you to believe, that things are fast, that things are cheap and easy. That's not true. And if you've been in business for a while, you absolutely know that's the case, that it's not fast and easy. So you need to pace yourself and you need to invest wisely. This also includes doing a lot of mindset work because as you are working across that longer timeline of the build timeline and doing lots of iterations, it's going to bring up a lot of mindset stuff to work through. And then finally, that business focused timeline, just know that clarity and that specificity and focus comes through action, not before it. Okay, so you cannot sit there in the stew of all the things that you're doing thinking you will find focus before you need to go do the next thing. Go do the next thing and the focus will follow. Let's talk about how to align your time zones and timelines for better revenue and energy. Okay, so again, reminder, the time zones is how you work and the timelines is when the results are going to come. And your goal is to align your daily time activities with the times that you're actually on, the timelines that you're on. Let me give you some examples, so hopefully this will make it a little more concrete. Here is a scenario. I've been posting and sending emails, but nothing's happening. Okay, you might be in month 1 or 2 of the marketing timeline. But if your calendar is spent in mostly in the expense or the income time zones, you're just not giving yourself enough time for visibility and for the volume of outreach and follow-up to gain traction. So you need to be shifting your efforts into more of that investment time zone. Another scenario, my leads come in weird waves. You could be doing the herchy-lurchy. That's how I call that. Start with your marketing. You get clients and projects and you're heads down busy with that. So you stop doing your marketing and then till those clients and projects wrap up. And then you look up and you're like, oh no, I need to go get some more. Then you start your marketing again. That's the herchy-lurchy. And that can mean looking at or spending time inconsistently in the investment time zone. followed by these long stretches of all of your time in the income time zone. And that inconsistency, that herchy-lurchy is what's causing the leads to come in weird waves. Another scenario could be, I've been working on my offer forever, but it's still not ready. You could be deep in the build timeline. But if your week is packed with client delivery, so you're spending most of your time in income or admin, right? That's the expense time zone. What you really need is more focused time in the investment time zone to get things across the finish line. Absolutely, when you're building assets, leverageable assets, and building out your IP, that is investment time zone work, and you need to create that space in your calendar for it. Okay, another scenario. I know I want to pivot, but I don't know what the new thing is yet. So you're in the middle of that business focused timeline. You're in a visioning season, and you need to be spending more time in investment, because allowing yourself to move through those ideas, articulate those, practice those, putting those out in the world is going to help you develop that focus that you're looking for much faster. And then you might be feeling stuck, right? That could be because you're probably on more than one timeline. For example, you might be rebuilding an offer, which means you're on the build timeline, while you're also trying to keep your email list warmed up and engaged. That means you're on a marketing timeline. And you could be rethinking your positioning, which means you're on a business-focused timeline. So you might be on all of these timelines. And that is normal. But if your week is all spent in income and expense time zone, none of those timelines are being supportive. You need time in the investment time zone. Okay, so I hope you see that pattern, right? More time in the investment time zone. That is where the future of your business is. When you have harmony between your time zones and your timelines, you're going to stop spinning stories, right? You're going to stop telling yourself stories about what's really happening, because you'll know what is actually happening. You will stay on track even when things feel slow, because you understand that you're on one of these timelines. And that's going to allow you to gain momentum and make better decisions, right? Because you're going to be choosing from a place of vision and feeling grounded in what you're doing versus panic and making decisions from a reactive state. You'll also be able to conserve your resources and your creative energy. And when you're in business for yourself, again, your time is your most precious resource, but I would also argue your creative energy is equally important too. You need those to sustain yourself through the challenges, the inevitable challenges of being in business. And this is where you create your future, right? This is how you create your future. And your future being however you envision your success and the amount of revenue that you want to be bringing in. So I'm going to leave you with a couple more questions here. Where are you overspending time right now? What does that time zone ratio look like? And which timelines might you be on right now? So given what I've shared here, how might you shift how you're feeling about your progress? Okay, and how are these things working together for you? Now, one of the resources that I have for you that you can get access to right where you're watching this video is the Revenue Booster Blueprint. And this is an excellent resource to support you in your investment time zone, because remember, investment time zone is about you doing business development and CEO level work, which includes outreach and follow-up. So this Revenue Booster Blueprint is going to help you with that. It will help you identify where you're closest to the money, give you some messaging scripts for doing your outreach and follow-up, and best tips for how to maximize those efforts. So grab that where you're watching this video. The business that you're building is not about just what you make, right? It's not about just the revenue that you bring in. It's about who you're becoming and what kind of work you want to be known for 3, 6, 12 months from now. And I certainly hope that what I've shared here today will help you reimagine and understand better your most precious resource, how you're spending your time in your business, and how that's supporting you to build the business that you love. All right, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you again soon. Take care.